Hello. Lately, there have been a great number of outrageous things happening. I'm sure you know by now. The spying, the ridiculous imprisonment of Bradley Manning. Outrageous IRS activity that specifically um, targets certain people of a political viewpoint, and all the lies. Anyways, it's all things people should be furious about. However, there's much worse things that have already come to pass that I just learned about. I'm only 28, so when this stuff happened, I was a little kid. I was less than 10 years old, and you couldn't have explained it to me, and I probably wouldn't have understood, or if I did, I have no idea. I didn't think about this type of stuff when I was 10. What I'm talking about is civil asset forfeiture. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it in a minute, but before I do, I'd like to say, it started in like the late 80s, early 90s. I was a kid. It had a lot to do with the war on drugs. And I'm bringing up the time because I was too young to know or understand the gravity of the situation. So Americans who were adults at the time, you should be ashamed, because you should have flipped your wig over this, or whatever you want to say. It's ridiculous. You guys should have abolished the government back then, because this is so heinous. It's horrible. But it pales. Everything else pales in comparison to this. Anyways, I'll move on. So what is civil asset forfeiture? And the short version is the government can, at any time, take everything you have. Everything. And if you dare try to stop them, they can kill you. Let me say this again, in maybe a way that sounds worse. It is completely legal within the boundaries of the law for the government to kill you whenever they want and take everything that you have. That is legal. You cannot stop them. It's the law. They can kill you and take your things. The long version, which in no way sounds any less horrible, it's just longer. The first thing you need to know is that due process doesn't apply. It starts when a police officer testifies to a judge under oath that he believes, because of some informant, whether truthful or fictional, does not matter. The judge doesn't need any proof. Testify to the judge that they need to seize your home or your car or something, whatever, because it had something to do with something unlawful. You can see probably how this ties into war on drugs, because back when they were fighting it, this was a pretty big reason to take stuff from people. Oh, we think their house, they're making crack cocaine in there. Let's take it. Now, the weird part is, well, I'll get to it in a minute here. But so, the weird part, before I get to the other weird part, there's some weird parts, but the weird part's who's guilty, because it isn't necessarily you. Yes, you're guilty, but not in the same way. It's property that's guilty. They're seizing it because they're like, well, this was tainted by illegal things. Therefore, we need to take it to stop the illegal things. Now, they might try you later, but they get around this by claiming that, well, it's all in one, even though it's not. It is double jeopardy to punish you by taking your property, and then also to put you on trial and sue for illegal actions. But they get around it by saying, no, it's all in one case. You can't tell us that. Anyway, so they're not charging you with anything. Just hand over the guilty party. Your party. You might see wording it that way. Hand over the guilty party. It's your property. Therefore, if you don't, you're harboring a fugitive. That's the whole, oh, they can kill you then, because you're obstructing justice and refusing to comply. Therefore, they can kill you. Anyways, so at first you might wonder, like, do they have to have proof? The answer is no, they don't. The police officer swears under oath that he believed your house was used for something illegal, blah, blah, blah. That's all the judge needs. The informant doesn't have to be real, like I said. Could the judge deny the warrant? Yeah, he could. But what reason does the judge have to believe that the cop's lying and saying, we need to seize this house because somebody told me that's a valuable informant? What makes it valuable? He doesn't have to prove it. He doesn't have to prove that the informant even exists. So this is one of the rare cases where hearsay isn't considered useless, and it's in fact the norm for starting a civil asset forfeiture case. Oftentimes the informant, if there is one, also stands to gain up to 25% of the assets that are seized. So if the cop's not making up the idea of the informant gets a piece of the pot. Wonderful, isn't it? So it stands to benefit the informer. Think about that for a second, and you can think up all kinds of diabolical ways that you could use this system against anybody. And why would the cops be like, well, no, you can't do that? Or would they think, yeah, I could get some of that stuff. That could be my stuff now. What's worse is remember who's guilty. It's your stuff. Since your stuff can't argue for itself, it's not given a trial. It's pretty much guilty. And since you aren't on trial, the stuff is inherently guilty. Even if they didn't let you argue your side of the situation, you'd be attempting to prove a negative. So even if they let you argue, you'd be attempting to prove a negative. It's like saying, you, watching this video, prove to me that on October 4th, 1999, that your house didn't have cocaine in it. Prove it. Prove it. You can't. So they can take your stuff because you can't prove it. I know what you're thinking. That's not due process of law. Doesn't matter. They're not trying a human. Humans have rights. Stuff do not. Now they're ignoring property rights, but they're claiming that the house is guilty because there was cocaine in it. So they were told. No proof necessary. Now, if you were thinking you were living in a space that was rented, I'm sorry, but that's worse. How can it be worse? Well, it works like this. So police officers will tell your landlord you have 2 weeks to get everybody out. Chances are they're going to tell them why. They're probably going to say, well, we have reason to believe there's drug running going on in your building. And if the landlord's nice, they'll tell you and you'll get the hell out of here because maybe the landlord knows you're not a drug runner. But it's a bit more likely that the landlord will go to their lawyer. The lawyer will tell them, well, you have to give your tenants due process. And therefore the tenants will be like, well, I want to prove that I didn't do this. Doesn't matter. They can still encroach in and you won't be able to finish due process in the time that it takes for them to take the building and all the stuff in the building, including the tenants' things in the building. What might be more likely, though, is think about it this way. Say you own property and you rent it out. A cop comes up and says, people are running drugs out of your building. We need to seize it. Now, first off, I suppose maybe if you know the tenants, you might say, no, that's not true. But say you don't, which my landlords don't really know me. I mean, they don't. It's not like they check in on me and they're my buddies. But say that's the case, they might actually hold it against you. Like, oh, they made me lose my stuff. They made me lose my property, fuckers. And therefore, they might not tell you, just so that you get all of your stuff taken from you, so that you suffer as well. It could be the case. It's hard to say. Anyways, moving on. So how about, oh, well, at least my business is safe or my place of employment, right? No. Wrong. If one person allegedly did something illegal on or in the property of said business, like, say, money laundering or something, then the police can seize everything. Everything. How so? Well, the belief is that the tainted money from the laundering or whatever it is could contaminate everything, because there's no way to know if some of the laundered money was used to buy some of the stuff in the building. And there's no way to prove it, really. You might have a better chance with a business because some businesses do keep good records and some businesses have cameras on the grounds at all times, but not all of them. So therefore, yeah, it's pretty easy to just come in and take the business and everything that's in it. That's pretty bad. Moving on, although it's rare and certainly nowhere near the majority of civil asset forfeiture cases, democide happens. If you don't know what the word democide means, it means death by government. Think of it. Death by government. It's it's the leading cause of death in the world. But aside from that, let's move on. It happens when people who are victims of civil asset forfeiture resisting the tyranny that's taking place. Whenever they fight non-violently or violently, either way, fighting is understandable, seeing how it's unjustifiable and near impossible to reverse. So who wouldn't fight it? You would fight it. You would want to fight it. One such case is Donald Scott. He owned a 200-acre ranch that ended up being surrounded by the National Park Service land. The Park Service repeatedly approached Donald to purchase the land for a large amount of money, and he always refused. Donald Scott predicted that, having been hard-pressed to sell so many times, that he would probably end up the victim of a murder plot against him over his land. He was correct. Though it wasn't the Park Service that did it. It was the LA County Sheriff's Department. They received an anonymous tip that there were drugs. They didn't go in immediately and seize the land. Rather, they did some reconnaissance and found nothing. Frustrated with this, they decided to go with a made-up story about possibly that Donald Scott was growing weed from vines high up in the trees. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of that. I don't even know if that's possible. But it was good enough to issue the warrant. So something to remember about this is that it took place in 1993, and the Sheriff's Department was in fiscal crisis, scrambling for money. So this was a good method for them to make up revenue that wasn't allocated to them by the state. So they break into crack houses or whatever and seize the money as well as the drugs. Now you might be thinking, well, they can't seize evidence of a crime. If it's the case of forfeiture, yes, they can take the evidence and use it for themselves. Now, I don't know about you, but they probably sold the drugs on the streets as well. It happens. And where I grew up, there was a DARE officer caught for selling drugs to kids in a town of 6,000 people. So, I'm sorry, it happens. Anyways, back to Donald Scott. The police moved in on his property, broke into the house, backed his wife into the living room, and as she was screaming, "Don't kill me," Donald woke up from a nap, and he said, "Are you all right?" And as he walked into the stairwell with a gun like this, pointed up, and the police pointed their weapons, demanded he lower the weapon, which, what's going to happen? You're going to go, you see the motion? It's pointing right at you. So they shot him and killed him, and that's what it said in the police report. Which to me, I think, might be careful wording to say lower the weapon instead of drop the weapon, but I don't know. After killing the man, Gary Spencer and his partner John Carter posed for photographs, smiling arm in arm outside of the cabin. Ha ha ha, we just killed the man. Anyways, they didn't care. And people, where was the outrage then? Let us not forget that our government has been doing horrible, terrible things for a number of years, and we've just accepted it as normal. We have just come to terms with that's the way it is. But no, it isn't. That's not the way it is. This is the way. The way it is like you own your life. You can do whatever you want, and stop you but you. This past Independence Day, I partook in a protest by myself. No one was there. I don't know why more of you are not outraged. We have to do something. I'm running out of time on this video, so I'm going to end it. I hope this might have helped wake people up. Goodbye.